So, our final session for the first day is about to begin, and it's going to be moderated by someone that you will have met earlier on, Jeff Hofmann. And this panel is actually going to discuss best practices of integrating disruptive products and services across business portfolios, which is an essential panel given the unprecedented pace of technological advances. And I was talking to Jeff earlier on, and I was saying, sometimes, though, audiences like to know what goes wrong and what do you do when things don't work out. So hopefully we'll be able to explore that within this session too. So I would like to invite Jeff Hofmann to come up on stage first, so you can then welcome your panelists. And our first panelist is the CEO of Exo Works in New York. Please welcome Miss Emily Sydney-Smith. And our next panelist is Kристиан Bahu of BMW's Head of Government and External Affairs. Kристиан. And next up, we have Eric Meyer, who's the incoming Senior VP for Europe at Mac 49. Eric. And our final panelist is someone who I haven't seen either, is Mr. Hyun Suk Choo, who's head of stacked performance parts at Hyundai Motor Group.
All right, I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into it. We have really two topics that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about innovation and what it really means. And then we're going to talk about disruption, right? And you innovate and you create disruptive ideas and disruptive technologies. How do you integrate those? How do you make products out of them? How do you put them into an already running company? And so I want to start with this. I want to just share with you guys, I saw a video about innovation. And this is what it was. It was a man comes into his office and all of his employees, everybody's in the conference room with the lights off, and they're laying on the ground on mats. And he says, "What are you people doing?" And the employees say, "We're innovating." And he said, "Well, how does this work?" And the employees say, "We just lay here in the dark and hope that somebody gets a good idea." And he says, "How is this going to make us more profitable?" And there's a long silence, and one of the people said, "We haven't innovated that yet." So the reason I tell you that story is when we say the word innovation, no one really knows what it means anymore. It's already an old word for some people. Some companies have a director of innovation, and you ask them why, and they say because they wanted someone to have this title. So I want to start. We'll start down there. What actually is innovation? And what I want you guys to talk about is it an idea? Is it a process? Let's get concrete and give them something they can use. What does innovation mean in your world?
Great. Okay, so you can hear me, right? For us, it's doing something at least 10 times better.
Can you put your mic a little bit closer?
Yeah. So it's doing something at least 10 times better than the status quo in the entire industry. And so that means that innovation is not doing an expansion project that's going to be the same as what you've done before. It's not doing something like bringing in SAP or Salesforce, although those digitization plays are really important, but any of your competitors can do it. So it needs to be something that truly is 10 times better, and that can be in any measure. It might be profitable, more safe, cheaper, faster, higher customer satisfaction, but in some measure it has to be at least 10 times better.
That's excellent. We're going to come back to you for some examples, but Kристиан?
Thank you. First of all, good evening from my side. I would like to thank the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce for the invitation
and please put your mic closer as well.
Setting up this conference and inviting me and all my distinguished panelists. So For BMW, in the last decades, we used to produce cars, sell them, and that was it, basically. We were very successful in offering a product, and our customers would just own a car and have complete control over it. But as, of course, we're evolving and then things are changing, we now see connectivity playing an increased importance for customers. People expect their car to be connected, to use it as a digital device while still having complete control over it. But what our colleagues in Munich are currently working on in providing to our customers in the future is to have the car as a service and mobility as a service, and in order to have a sustainable offer for every mobility need across different means of transportation.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, good evening. Salam alaikum. Thank you for having me. I actually would phrase it very short. Everything your board doesn't want you to do, and they don't know. Because what you see now is disruption doesn't come from your industry, but comes outside from your industry. So if you look at the car industry, it's not being disrupted by other car companies, it's disrupted by Uber. The hotel industry is not disrupted by other hotels, etc., etc. So the last 7 years, I've been underway with doing things that my board really didn't want me to do. And how did I do that? Under the table, like, quiet. And when it broke to a certain number, then we would publicize it, and then we would go, live with it. And that's why I just joined MAC 49, because what MAC 49 does, it helps innovators succeed in global companies. Because the DNA of a global company is being very successful on a very large scale, very proficient at what it does. But what it doesn't do is new stuff very envisioned. So that's why I would phrase innovation everything you don't know how to do. And I think why we're here, and we're working with the EDB in Bahrain, we look forward to do this, and we do this also in Singapore, is help this country get forward with the population on new stuff, because we don't know what that will look like. But what we do know is that we together need to experiment to understand it and to move forward.
Thank you. Choo.
Yes. In the case of the car industry, I think that the global environmental regulation caused the innovation. First, let me explain the global environmental regulation and its impact on auto industry. And there have been a global effort to reduce the impact of global warming. So if we do not satisfy the regulation, car company face the penalty, including sales restriction and fines. So we think that we need innovation in the car industry.
Okay, very good. So you can already see, though, that innovation means a lot of things to a lot of people. And the definition is always different. But here's something that I think is really common, that a lot of you probably have the same issue, which is that when you say you want to be more innovative, everybody says it, but how do you do it? And what I'm saying is, what does a company have to get right? Because I see so many companies that say they're innovating and they're really not. They're just running their business. What do you have to do? Why is it? Let's start with this. What is the reason? What makes it hard? Right? You're running a business and management or somebody says, let's innovate, while you have to keep making your numbers and running your business. What's hard about innovating, and what do you have to do in an organization to enable innovating? Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, it's a real customer pain, right? Because what we see now is everybody has an idea, and now we see startup batches coming on. So, if you're an affluent country like Bahrain, or I'm coming from the Netherlands or Singapore, you have a lot of people who want to do business with you, and you will need to figure out the 20-80 rule. What is the 20% of people, or maybe 10%? I was just talking to an angel investor that said it's even 10%, Eric, and I was going, okay. What is the 20% to 10% of people you want to spend your days with understanding which startups to integrate? So what will work for Bahrain as going forward in Industry 4.0, which are the companies you want to spend your time and money with to understand how to do this and how to upskill your people. And also for the people, there's a new kind of dimension going on here. It used to be it's a social security state. And you have seen in Europe where that leads to. It's like ultra-right voting, and people don't understand anymore where the bus is going. So what we ask now from our people is, don't be driven by the bus, drive the bus. But that means also for people that they upskill themselves. And the problem of upskilling is you can't read it in a book, right? You need to do it. So what you want to do is you want to get your population, you want to get your company people involved with people who've already been there. Little analogy, and then I'll shut up. It's mountain climbing, right? If we want to climb a mountain, it's nice to have all the data on the mountain, but I'd rather have 2 Sherpas who get me up there because they've been there. So you really want to work with 2 kinds of people. People who have done corporate venturing before in corporations, and people who have done startups before. And people, please stay away from people who say, yeah, go and try and fail something, because they don't have skin in the game. You really don't want to fail. You want to pivot towards a better future.
Okay, Emily, I want you to go last on purpose. That was specific. Chu, how about you? For what do you need to do in your company to enable innovation? What do your people need to be able to create?
First of all, we have to serve the regulation. The global environmental regulation. So that's why we need the innovation. In company, we have been developing technology under eco-economic, under friendly vehicle strategy. So from increasing energy, internal combustion engine efficiency, expanding HEV lineup to battery and fuel cell electric vehicle. So recently we are developing our effort on developing 2 eco-friendly vehicles, believing that electric, battery, and fuel cell vehicle will coexist in the near future. So we think that the innovation in the car company is to make eco-friendly vehicle.
To make what?
Eco-friendly vehicles.
Okay. Eco-friendly vehicles is your focus. All right, we'll come back to that. Christian.
So for us, clearly, customer comes first, right? And what we see, and I want to focus on 3 pillars in terms of the future of mobility, is divergence between power of choice on the one hand and behavioral change on the other hand. So, and then the 3rd pillar might be trust. So what we see is we have one field of when it comes to electromobility, the first questions are, how far can I drive? How long does it take to charge? Where can I charge? So our people need really to go into the markets and understand customer needs and convince them of our products and our services and the availability of them. The second is then, and this is something that drives us at BMW as well, is the car sharing. Yes, so this is something that we also envisage as being something that we need to educate people to be comfortable with in order to reduce the number of cars and congestion and so forth and so on. And the third pillar that I want to raise here is also autonomous technology. So here basically it requires not just research and convincing people to trust the car, but it requires really a moonshoot thinking. Yeah, so I think we are very, very far from what we envisage as the future of mobility will be when we have the pictures in mind of the driverless car, for example. Here, I think there's still a long way to go.
What about flying cars? That's what I'm waiting for. I want a flying car. Your industry is one of the most visible industries in innovation because of things like driverless cars. People think about it. So, Emily, here's the question. And I want our audience to think about if this is you when she answers this question. When you go into a company and they say, we want to innovate, and you can jump into this as well afterwards, what does it look like when you get there, and what do you need to change in a company? And particularly, what I'd love you guys to talk about, all of you, is tools. Are there innovation tools and techniques that you use to, so when you're working on your vision of eco-friendly and you're working on your vision, it might be autonomous, are there innovation tools that we should know about, that everybody here, and techniques should be using? So talk about what a company looks like and what you turn it into.
Great. So actually, to start with your other question and come to that, so what we find is that a lot of companies don't know what good looks like. And so they create these innovation teams, and especially around the world we see these innovation teams that then start to work and they don't know what to do. And so they start doing really strange things. And the first thing that tends to happen is that they say, okay, well, let's work out what the problems are in the company. And when you do that, everyone goes, that person's a problem and that person's a problem, and it raises the fight or flight instinct across the company. And so those people just get stuck. They don't have the political capital to actually do anything. And we see that 60% of innovation teams in America have already failed, and a lot of the other ones are in zombie mode. And so when we come in, often we're trying to actually get that innovation team out of that zombie mode and actually into something productive. And so the first thing that you want to do is actually have action-driven processes. It has to be hugely systematic. And so we actually also think that consulting model is not the right one. You actually want your people, as Eric said, to actually be coming up with the ideas. So if you can actually coach people through that process and really show them how to innovate, we think that you need at least 10 weeks to actually embed processes and embed learning and habits amongst those teams and really understand the innovation ideas enough. And that you want to have weekly assignments across those 10 weeks, and that you know that at the end of the 10 weeks, those teams have to have come up with a set number of initiatives that can actually be implemented. And they have to be things that have some quick wins, even though you want them to then have stages that go to the exponential. But if you don't have those quick wins and that quick profit, then the company immune system, the immune system that likes to stop change, will come and kill that innovation every single time.
So I just want to summarize, because she made some really important key points. One of them was that 10 weeks, and whether it's 10 weeks or more or less, it's a time that you have to invest in getting people there. The other thing she said was there's a process, a methodology to teaching it. And the last thing was about having short-term achievable results. Don't shoot for the big, giant innovation all at once. So what I'd like to hear from you guys, and Eric, you can jump in, but let's talk about, like she did, tools you can use to foster innovation in your companies. What do you see, Eric?
Same here. So innovation is not a option. It's like mountain climbing. If you don't know what you're doing downstairs, you will certainly not know it up the mountain. So you get prepped very good. Like, if you go into the death zone, which I call the startup death zone, is when you have spent all the money from your board, and they start then to have the weekly reporting because you haven't turned in a dime yet. And that phase you want to know before you start from base camp. So very important, you do the innovate, ideate, scale, and automate phases. But what is really important here is that your new venture board needs to be trained on this one, because throwing money at things is not going to help you. What needs to be happening there is that people are in the venture board who know what their task is to make this innovation, this startup, happen. So what is going to be their part of the game that they're going to help to bury down the information burdens, or the antibodies into the organization, that HR is going to help you as fast as they can. IT is going to really make that platform for you. Finance is really going to do that reporting that doesn't aggravate the board. And certainly after 18 months, you don't get that new reorganization and that whole venture board is gone, right? That's one part of the thing. The second part is it's a startup, and that means full-time startup. So we're not doing this halfway, like, I have 2 other jobs. Nope. We put in a full CEO, we put in a full team, and we don't say, go out, try and fail. That's not what you're saying. We're saying, this is what we think it looks like. Let's work from the future backwards, what the MVP, the minimal viable product will be that we launch tomorrow. When we have that, some extremely rigorous, and I repeat, extremely rigorous testing starts. That means I'm going to go out to my key customers, and I'm not going to ask, do you want to buy this? But you are going to buy this, and how many you want to pay? Because there's, I think, 5 times yes. There's yes, I will join you, and I don't know, I will walk out tomorrow. And there's yes, I want to be with you on the mountain with my money, on the table doing this. And there's a whole, range between those yeses. So those are predispositions before you go up that venture mountain. And you as a management need to recognize something very, very importantly, is you're not anymore the general charging in front of the troops and telling where to go because you basically don't know. It's not like I'm a 3-star general, go do this, I've done this 10 times before. This is blockchain, this is AI, this is machine learning. And on the panel before, you already heard that the executives sitting here don't really have the answers, which means I need to rely on my people, I need to rely on my Sherpas. That means that I'm expedition leader and I'm not the 3-star general, and I better be very good with my team because they are going to get me up the mountain, not myself. And this is the future for us in leadership. And if you haven't heard about agile leadership, Scrum, and all the other good stuff, there should be some alarm bells going off because that's really needed to get into innovation. And maybe a last point to make is you need to make your network and your ecosystem so you hear things coming in through your network. And I think Bahrain, the chambers are doing very good work, and the Economic Development Board too, is they have put their feelers out in the world to see what kind of developments are out there and what kind of signals are we getting that we can steer against, maybe buy, invest, partner, whatever we need to do to get over the wave.
Sure. So some great points there. First of all, I'll come right back to you. Don't assume that people know what their role is in innovation. Tell everybody what their part of it is, right? Then you said it's a full-time job. It's not 5% R&D anymore. Otherwise, you will not survive. Then you said to talk to your customers and early on engage them, and then work your network to be good listeners. Those are great techniques for all of us to do innovation better. Go ahead, Christian.
Thank you. Well, I mean, for us, we have around 16 tech offices worldwide who provide us with tech scouting and share with us some of their insight in the market, be it in the Middle East, in Latin America, in Asia, or in the Silicon Valley. But what I wanted to tell you is that we, as a BMW Group, we also know that we know our strengths and we know our weaknesses. So this is the reason why I think in the future we will not be providing mobility services in general, but more partnering with others. So we will, if you will outsource all this technology, or engage in cooperations with even some of our competitors, such as Daimler. We just launched this cooperation earlier this year in order not to let Uber become the Amazon of transportation, for example, but really to join forces in order to have the most significant impact. Because if you look at the numbers, currently we have 30 million customers worldwide in the traditional vehicle business. But we envisage that by the year 2025, combined with those mobility services that we will create through partnerships that I've just mentioned, there will be a market of 100 million customers in total. So
I heard something really important there, which is to partner with the people who are already innovating. You don't have to do everything yourself. If somebody's already out there and leading, you should partner with those people. I think that's a great piece of advice. Go ahead, Choo. About what are your processes for product innovation?
So I think in the case of auto industry, I think the development of eco-friendly vehicle is one of the tools for innovation in car industry. So we established a full eco-friendly vehicle lineup, including HEV and plug-in hybrid vehicle and electric vehicle and fuel cell vehicle. So we are concentrating on our effort to develop electric vehicle and fuel cell vehicle. So I think that's the most important tool for innovation in car industry these days.
Is what? Is staging?
These days.
Yeah, these days. Okay, yeah. So I like, though, what you said was that also narrow your focus, right? You can't innovate every product you have at once, so why don't you pick the ones that you're going to lead in the market in? And if eco cars is where you're going to lead, then focusing on that is really smart. So I want to ask you guys the hard question. And the hard question is about the DNA of innovation. I go visit companies, and I meet with the CEO, and he says, we're very open to innovation. But you pay your people for performance parameters. We have to make our numbers. So your people are afraid to innovate because if they mess up a good thing, they get in trouble. They're not rewarded for innovating. They're rewarded for selling 30,000 cars this month or creating a product. So how do all of us deal with this problem of the core DNA of a company? Our job is to make our numbers, but we're telling people to innovate. How does our audience, how does all of us get around that?
Yeah, don't get overboard now. Don't send everybody up the mountain for innovation. Like, we don't want everybody in Bahrain to go wild on startup. Please, right? Because I need my accountants. I need my law people who do their normal job. Innovation can only happen when they have a mothership that they can take off. If there's a mothership, you don't have any innovation. So please don't send the entire business up the mountain, because that won't work. That will be like putting base cap on the top. That doesn't make any sense. So I want to also put a word of caution there. If you ask mountaineers on the Mount Everest, on the Sherpas, they say half the people shouldn't be on the mountain, right? And the death toll in startup land is very high now. And that's why I'm from the Netherlands. We're working with Singapore. We love to work with Bahrain. Why? Because we can exchange notes. Because we're smaller, we're more agile, and we can talk to each other like, what happened? What worked for you well? And then the other thing is, when we do this, we want to have other kinds of rewards. Remember, I just said, stay away from executives who say, now go figure out and fail, because they didn't put the skin in the table. Your teams don't want to fail. You want to pivot to a workable outcome. Of course, you want to kill the walking dead, because here is a problem. You will have so much innovation coming towards you that you have these projects which the corporation wants to keep running, but from an innovation standpoint doesn't make any sense. You should be able to kill them too, because people don't want to be in a walking dead. Having said that all, you also need to create the incentives inside of the walls of your country, like your corporation, that if people take this risk, they get also the appropriate reward. Now, don't get me wrong. I think having 0.1% billionaires is a good thing for Earth, because now we see my children are on the streets on Friday. I've got 2 teenage daughters, and they say stop this mayhem. It's not about growth, it's about saving the planet, and there's no plan B. So this is the second one. If we do this together, there is leadership and there's the people who need to perform. Now we have IQ. IQ is intelligence. We have EQ is emotion, and now we need to go to WeQ. We all need to look together at that same picture, and we need to know who's going to be up the mountain, who's going to be the leadership providing the tools to do it up the mountain, and who's going to be the people staying in base camp to make this all happen. And all those people have their roles, rules, and responsibilities. So don't overhype your startup. Also, I've worked 10 years in Brussels with the economic, bank the European Investment Bank, European Investment Fund. And these are all institutions with their rights. So don't go overboard, but see together where the dynamic middle is, and this will keep changing all the time, where you together with other nations can work very quickly to a better future. And I think we all need that, because we can point to the Middle East in Europe, but I now have in Germany a real problem on people not being engaged, voting ultra-right, not being engaged at work. And that is real troublesome, because we have lost people in the bus. We have just not taken care of them. So don't go hype on this one. Everybody has a role and a role to play, and we need to take everybody on board. If we just go up the mountain alone, we will be alone on the mountain. I think alone is not a happy place to be.
Well, there's that old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Absolutely.
And that definitely makes sense. What about your 2 companies? And what I mean is, your management is saying innovate, but then the local department manager or head, somebody that runs production, sales, marketing, they have to make their numbers. So how do you balance telling people to innovate without messing up the business? Either of you. Go ahead, Christian.
I don't want to go again.
So, for us, we tend to separate these two. This is why I said we believe in corporations. So we leave the core business to our dealers, to our trusted importers, such as Euro Motors, I think, is represented today as well. So that is a long-standing relationship, and this is working has been working extremely well, and I believe that will be working in the future. So it's our task in our tech offices to create the product and services for the future, and not to interact with the core business of selling the car and providing a car to our customer, and which is also driven by the slogan, and in order to predict the future, you need to create it. So we tend to have separate silos, which we then, in the end, bring together as a core group strategy.
Thank you. I think that goes well with what Eric said. Some people have to stay back at base camp, and some people go on the mountain. Do you want to add to that? You don't all have to, but you guys can jump in, or otherwise do you want to add to that?
No, don't.
Okay. All right. Did you want to jump in?
Well, yeah, I'd like to actually talk about both an upside and a downside. So the upside is huge profit potential from these new industries that are starting. So Procter & Gamble made $500 million through the work that we did with them. We're working with flying car companies that have this huge opportunity that they're really excited about. We talk with clients who are in the IT outsourcing industry, and we say, well, you want to actually grow double the size of your business. How are you going to do that organically? But wow, you could actually be preparing to service the 3D printing market, and the fact that 1 trillion sensors are coming online around the world, and flying cars. You know, there is a huge opportunity there. On the downside is disruption. So we look at the largest companies in the world, and almost all of them are only iterating on their existing core products and services. And yet we see that at least 30% of those core products and services will be obsolete within 10 years. And so if those companies are not actually getting on to true innovation and getting to the new profit centres, they're toast. And we've actually worked with companies that have come to us and said, we know that we're toast. Help us actually prepare. One of our clients in the financial services industry 3 years ago came to us and said, we know that trading fees, which was 60% of their profits, are going to zero. Now, that actually happened a month ago, that they went to zero. But we had actually taken down that share to about 15% because we had helped them create all sorts of other profit opportunities there. So it's really important to think about both that upside and downside.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Go ahead.
I can jump in further. So, thanks. So I'm also on the advisory board of the Telecom Management Forum, which you saw in the announcement. So in the advisory board, like in Telecom Management Forum, we work together with our competitors in open innovation. Why do we do this? Because the disruption doesn't come from our industry. It comes from all those outside people. Flying cars might seem a bit off now, but flying drones is certainly there. Flying packages are there. So there are very much applications, as you today stated, with the planting of the trees, which is very interesting for an application to do. Coming back to the theme, is we work as a competitor, T-Mobile US, with Verizon, with China Mobile, with Etisalat, on delivery projects which are technically very difficult to do. So it's a large R&D killing. So it's 5G networks. 5G networks are virtualized. 5G networks are microwave. 5G networks do beamforming. Now, doing all this by yourself as a telco operator with one supplier would be killing it. So what we do is we open innovate together with all the competitions, inviting the suppliers in there. And here comes Mark 49 in the play, because then we have a product, and then we're going to match that product to a market. I'll give you a few good examples here. The problem is I'm not going to sell my stuff anymore to my customers. I was standing the other day in January on one of the biggest shopping malls in the world, and you can guess where that is, together with my colleague Hatam, and we looked over this area where people were eating. And Hatam said, Eric, what do you see? And I said, Hatam, I see they're eating. I said, no, you're not looking well. And then I saw everybody had their mobile phone in their hands. And Hatam said, they're having a micro moment. They're looking at their phone. Then we started asking, what are you doing? And I think mostly of them, they were having social chats, they were playing games, they were having micro moments on that phone. And what we then discovered is that the meal they were eating was like $1 or $2. You know, if you have a Mac, it's like, you know, they have to put on the fry, they have to get the Mac in, they have to whatever, right? So the margin on that McDonald's, or the margin of that meal is so small. But whilst they were playing 10 times Candy Crush, they had 10 times, 5 times the margin. right? So recently, McDonald's bought from Deutsche Telekom a software company out of their venture fund for 300 million. Guess what they are doing? They want you to have your micro moment with your meal. Remember you had those little Disney figurines in the meal and the kids wanted to play with the figurines? That's over. They want to play with your mobile phone. And now you have content to...
So I think you're really illustrating the fact that all of us have to evolve. You know, you use the word toast. We'll become toast. You really have to look at... And you're not in the car business anymore. You're in the mobility business, right? If you said we just sell cars... In fact, I was giving a talk on Wall Street and I wrote down what I think are the 3 most dangerous words in business for all of us in this room. And those are, we're doing fine. Because companies say, my business is going great, I don't need to do anything. Those are the companies, me and a group of friends, I was telling you this, we keep a death watch, a list, and we try to predict when companies who think they're doing great will go out of business because they're not changing. So let's move to the next topic before we get into some questions. And by the way, like Roy told you, if you have questions, please go on to Slido and submit them on the question part, and I'll look at them in a few minutes. Let's move to the disruption part. Disruption is hard, it's scary, it's risky, it's expensive, and it's absolutely necessary. So let's talk about how you disrupt, right? And some examples, what I'd like to hear, you know, our example was one day I was told that I was public enemy number 1 because we caused millions of travel agents. My company, we created online booking that later became Expedia and Priceline and Booking.com, and millions of travel agents lost their job. That is painful. People don't like it, right? But the industry needed to be disrupted. So let's talk about, what I'd like to hear from you guys is an example of a disruption that you did, how painful it was, but how'd you do it anyway?
Right, so last December, the European Commission decided that car manufacturers need to cut their CO2 emissions by 70% till the year 2030. So that was certainly not the best case in terms of our lobbying team in Brussels, but still put us in serious kind of internal discussions in how and if at all we as BMW Group are able to fulfill the goals that were set by the European heads of state and government. So ultimately, we now are investing substantial amounts of our R&D in new technologies and in actually how should I put this? Basically, we believe that, and this is something that we're trying to work out together with the governments who have decided this, to have the infrastructure ready for our cars to be fully electrified, because it's a bit of a divergence, if this is the right word. Basically, like them telling us as a disruptive moment, you need to cut by 70%, but we are not able to provide your clients and your customers with the appropriate infrastructure. So this is something that we are currently discussing with all 28 governments and local municipalities and governors and so forth and so on, in order really to make sure that both end up in a win-win situation, both the European government and us as car manufacturer.
Excellent. Choo, how about you? Is there an example of a disruption that your company did?
A disruptive product, I think that the vehicle powered by hydrogen and fuel cell vehicle will be a disruptive.
That's pretty disruptive, yeah.
I think so, because this kind of product can change the life of people and to change the people thinking about something. So, but I think that disruptive product can have multiple functions besides its original function. Just like fuel cell vehicle can reduce the air pollution by purifying the air into the fuel cell system. And the second, the fuel cell can be used as a generator itself. So, for example, one fuel cell vehicle can produce 100 kilowatts of electric power. So it means that 100,000 fuel cell vehicle can produce same amount of power that one nuclear power plant can produce. So it's very, very interesting.
That's a big disruptive step.
I think so.
So, Emily, you said part of innovation was being able to do something 10 times better than we did it before our competitors. Give us an example from your life or your customers of a 10x disruption, and how was it pushed out to market?
So one of my favorites, actually, a lot of people say, is it innovation? So when we were working with Procter & Gamble, they decided that they really wanted to have much more efficient invoicing between their major suppliers and also between their divisions. And they started to actually iterate and say, wow, we can very quickly get to a 50% gain. And then they actually went through the process with us many, many times to keep asking, but why? But what is actually happening here? And the underlying question that came to them was, why do we need invoices in the first place between these major suppliers? And they did away with $100 million worth of invoices. And so that was a complete 100% gain. But it was actually just thinking about something completely differently. It wasn't bringing in new technology. It was just having the guts to think differently.
Excellent. Go ahead, Eric.
I can build on that. It's very good said. Well said. So you have, at Mach 49, we see three kinds of disruptors. Inside out, outside in, and then your ecosystem. What does that mean? There are a lot of innovation Sherpas inside of your company. Set them free. Listen to them. There are people, you said, it can be like, when my board came to me and said, like, Eric, we want to do machine learning. We want to talk to a computer. We had a little team was like, keeping the board happy, and they can talk to the computer now. But the real money was made in revenue assurance, in credit checks, in network optimization. These are incredibly unsexy projects. They will make you millions, and no board member wants to talk about it, but it's so rewarding to the bottom line, and your internal innovation Sherpas will love it, right? First, disrupt inside out. What do your customer really want? How can you improve? Second part, outside in. Set up a real good corporate venture capital group. That means they're not being reorganized every 18 months because we are on the strategy and we have not made our numbers, blah, blah, blah. You can go on for hours. And then you work with those companies you really want to work with, and you're not throwing spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. Because what you see a lot is they're spending a lot of money, and one of the live is nurturing the other 99 death. Don't do that. So really when you go corporate venturing, look at those companies and those countries who make sense to you. What does make sense to Bahrain? The Netherlands, Singapore, Luxembourg, Malta. All those little countries and companies who can work with you and have the same speed and the same think. If I start tomorrow to work with, say, GE, that's nice if I'm a small company, but they will kill me. They will absolutely kill me in the process. And they won't understand you. Their M&A department will look at you like you're a zombie. You go like, I want to do venture. And they go like, no, we want to do due diligence, right? Last point is if you do a Innovate tour, you can visit Google, you can visit Microsoft, you can visit Apple, you can visit Facebook. It's all very nice, but remember, these are the 1 in a 1 million what you're looking at. So what you better do if you do a disruptor at Silicon Valley or in Shenzhen or wherever in Tel Aviv, go look at those companies who make sense to you, who are close to you and who can work with you. I have seen so much tours of executives going to Silicon Valley and come back to me with all kinds of products that we don't need in Europe. Little example, music streaming service. They come back with a company, and I need to implement that in 10 countries. The only problem is that service cost $5 a month, and the ARPU in my countries was below $1. So my Polish people then go. It doesn't help us. Secondly, if the hotline is daily up in the US, it doesn't help us in Europe, right? And I can go on and on if the API integration doesn't work. So you don't have a match, and you're frustrating people because the hopes are very high. It goes belly up, it goes into mayhem, and then you need to recover this. And I'm going to tell you something. A team that has been up the mountain and be left alone doesn't go up a second time. The expedition leader, the executive who did that, is already gone. Now, you want to try to fix this? You don't. So what you want to do is really select carefully who you want to work with, because you're very right. You have a lot of walking death hopping around and a lot of people who you don't need to spend attention with. You're a small country. Your EDB needs to spend time with people who matter Spend time with people who've been there before. Spend time who have the same issues. If we together, the Netherlands and Bahrain, are going to talk tomorrow to the US, they don't care. They don't have the same problems. You have other problems in the US, right?
That's true. So let's, in the interest of innovation and efficiency, Roy and I decided not to pass the microphone around anymore. We're going to do it on Slido, and you guys sent me some great questions, so I want to get to some of those right now. And this, you don't all have to answer, just whoever wants to answer, just raise your hand and let me know. Here's one. What are the key questions to ask internally to foster innovation? Somebody asked that. So who wants to take that? That's a great question. Internally, what do I have to ask to get, were you raising your hand? To foster innovation. Anybody? Apparently the questions are hard.
I'll do it very simply. What are you going to add to this?
Pardon?
I mean, customers' requirements are changing rapidly, as is the global environment. So I think this would be one of the core questions that I would ask. Like, really go to the client and see what they need, what they desire, and that can be different from region to region. And I think this is also one of the challenges that if innovation might work in the United States but not in Africa at the moment. So I think you need to be working on different platforms of innovation in that regard.
Go ahead, Emily.
So two things. First of all, I think every company needs to work out what they're really good at, and not saying we're really good at producing this product or service, but this is our talent, this is our resource pool. What else could it be used for? So that's where a lot of really good ideas come from, because otherwise you might as well be a startup without actually the resources of an existing company behind you. But I think also the question that companies need to really ask is, are we prepared to actually let people fail and succeed after that? Because a lot of corporations just are absolutely allergic to failure. But actually coming up with ideas that are 10 times better requires people to think big, to dream of crazy ideas, to sit with some of those ideas and do some research and then go, wow, that was a really bad idea. And then say, wow, but there was a really interesting seed in there, and maybe we can grow that into something extraordinary. But that failure is so much a part of the process of ideation that if you're not willing to do it, don't do it.
That's why I was talking about your core DNA. If your core DNA doesn't allow people to fail, they'll never make suggestions because they think they'll get fired. I'm going to keep us moving because we have a little bit of time left, and I want to get to the next question.
And the most disruption comes from outside of your industry. So we're not competing anymore inside of the industry. It's coming from outside.
And you have to be listening.
You ask yourself, who is after our cheese? What is our market? What have you? The next point to make is that we are going away from simple stuff. So I'm selling my stuff to my customers. We're going into platform business models. If you look at the, global CB Insights, global unicorns, 90% is platform. Now, what is a platform business? Say we take smart car. Smart parking, I have the city, I have the car owners, I have the parking guy, garage guys, I have the payment guys, I have the telecom operator. These are 5 parties. Now, if I'm going to do this normally over email, goodbye and good luck. Because this keeps changing all the time. And this is not a complexity times 5, it's a complexity square 5. And making those platform business model happen is what Amazon is doing, is what Facebook is doing, is what Google is doing. And they're looking at the data. If something doesn't happen, have you ever seen Amazon announcing something very big? Nope. They just test it out, try and test it out. Facebook always tells they're doing this and then they're doing that, right?
I just want to get us to the next question. I completely agree. This is an important one. More than one person brought this up. The board of your company tends to focus on short-term operating results, yet innovation is long-term. How do you deal with that? Who's responsible? Excuse me, what's the board's role? Take that one. Sorry, I don't have water.
Well, in my view, I think that you actually have to have those quick wins. If you don't have them, no one's going to quarter after quarter keep putting the money in. So it really has to be that staging process.
What about you guys? Your boards, go ahead, Choo. How does your board interact with your long-term projects?
I think that we make people think that it is important to accomplish long-term accomplishment. So it's in our company we think that innovation is more important than routine accomplishment. So we give the employee to the incentive to achieve long-term achievement for innovation, to make innovation.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead, and then I'm just going to take two more. We're running near the end of time here.
Just very quickly, I've already mentioned the potential that we see in innovation, increasing our business from 30 million to 100 customers. And I think having that in mind, I think, and facilitates a decision at a board level.
Thank you. Thank you guys for sending questions. The next question that someone sent says, what do you want for lunch? So what do you guys want for lunch? Or should we skip that question? Not sure why we got it, but thank you, whoever asked that.
No, I think that's a good question. Because over lunch, you build trust. You're not going to do anything.
Hey, nice segue.
No, this is interesting. Because also the story needs to be right. And I really admire the Middle East for this. They're very narrative in their telling. If your story is not convincing, if you're not a true executive, you won't get the people up the mountain. Because you're asking them to take risks. And if your board is not willing to really put down their defenses and to really invest, you will know.
Those companies won't make it.
No.
We all agree on that. Somebody asked about the relationship between innovation and sustainability. Because innovation is time-based. You're trying to keep up. You're trying to catch up, catch your competitors, lead the market. But does that work if you don't really have sustainability, if you're moving a little too quick? Let's talk about innovation and sustainability. And then we'll just do one more.
So we find that every fast-growing company in the world actually has what they call a massive transformative purpose, which is what they want to be in the world, how they want to improve the world. And when you've got that social impact that's tied into every decision-making process, then you actually find that the profitability flows from that. So, for instance, Unilever actually asked all of their different divisions to create their own massive transformative purpose. The 4 divisions that most implemented those are the fastest growing now. So it really does work, and then all those things like environmental friendly, socially responsibility, all those things just get embedded.
Yeah. From my point of view, it's not anymore a nice to have, it's a need to have, because the next generation has talked about my daughters. I asked my oldest daughter, I gave her a driving license, she goes, Dad, I don't need that. I have Grab, I have Uber, I have Gojek. And I don't want to pollute the world. And your car, by the way, is standing 80% silent outside. And I talked to her, I said, like, shall I get a battery car? And she said, like, no, because batteries are depleting precious minerals. So your diesel has already done 100,000 before your battery car is environmental equal. But I think your hydrogen car, I think we're waiting for that one. So it's not that easy. The youth is extremely well informed. They can do a lot of data. So I think what we do now with development boards is we also benchmark that against the UDPN 17 goals and against the environmental friendly goals. Maybe last tech, the MAC 49 founding partners, they have built the greenest house in the US. Going through that process is extremely painful. So knowing what is green and what is green plastering is very important.
Thank you.
We're happy to help you there.
Krishtjan, go ahead.
So when it comes to sustainability and innovation, BMW was the first OEM to listen to its engineers and our creative team and to launch a fully electrified car way ahead of any competitor back in 2010. And this trust enabled us to become a market leader worldwide in terms of e-mobility, smart energy, sustainability. So I think sometimes you just have to, it's necessary to take also a right amount of risk and believe in your capabilities in order to have the appropriate outcome and be successful.
Choo, you want to add anything?
No, I think that to make innovation sustainability, I think it's very important for employees to not discourage if they fail during making innovation. So I think it's very important for the encouragement.
I think we agree. If you take too short-term an approach, the employees won't want to try it either.
Maybe a nice finishing word is in this area, everybody needs to work together. So we have this demand from the youth who's on the streets and said, like, don't screw up my planet. There's no planet B. We need to work with government and companies. So now we need to do a very complex working together, looking at the same picture. And this is going to require a lot of effort from executives in companies, from non-for-profits, from government officials, from everybody in the room, that we start working together and taking it seriously. Because I feel ashamed for my generation. We just went for growth. I had a fantastic life. Thank you very much. I just don't want to screw it up for my children. Really,
I got to agree with you there.
And I think small countries can take really a leap step forward because we can move quickly, we can be agile. In the Netherlands, we have to do it. We're 70 million. We're, I think, the most populated country after Bangladesh. We will actually die in smog. So now we can't put any more trains on the rails. Everybody out of their cars. We will have car-free cities. We'll work with BMW.
It's going to have to be a disruptive innovation to make change. So we're down to the last few minutes here. So I just want to close. We'll go this way and ask you each to give, if you could give our audience your one most valuable piece of advice on how to innovate and disrupt, what would that be? Go ahead, Choo.
Can I answer later?
Yes.
I think that the advice for innovation, I think that starting the innovation is very important, very important, because I think that the innovation technology can contribute to other technology very easily. So I think that just starting innovation is very important for industry.
Thank you. Eric?
For me, it's thank you for having me here. Throughout our conversations and throughout conversation with you, I learn much more. Every time you learn more. I think that's the preeminence for us to move forward. So Industry 4.0 is this new world where we go to a global, sustainable system together in exchange with each other. So let's look at commonalities and stop the finger pointing. And I finally look forward to be sensible adult for my kids and look forward to working with you. Thank you
Excellent.
very much. Thank you
Kристиан?
Well, I think we are at some crucial crossroads, and if we don't push ourselves to change the way we think, to change the way we behave, the way we interact, the way we were taught to use some services, such as, for example, in the field of mobility, then I think this will be not so easy. So you need to be bold. You need to take tough decisions, and you need to believe in first and foremost in yourself.
Thank you. Emily, take us home.
So learn from the best. We can look at the world's fastest growing companies and look at what's shared between them. So tomorrow Salim will be speaking, and he actually looked at them and found that there are 11 attributes that are shared between those fastest growing companies. They're attributes that any company can actually take on board and grow with. So start to build those into your business.
All right, first of all, can you thank our panel, please, for their time? And then I'm going to invite Roy back up here. Roy, could you move these chairs? Do you mind moving some chairs? Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent stuff. Thank you.
I have to say, Eric was talking about mountaineering a lot. Interesting from the Netherlands, where you don't have any. But I will add one more comment. This is just something to think about. My brother is a mountaineer. And he said the one thing that you have to remember is that when you get to the top of the mountain, you have to get down alive, because that's when the problems take place. Anyway, one final comment. I would like to refer to somebody who was submitting questions, Adil Tiwana. I don't know who Adil Tiwana is, but I thought you've summed it up actually with a statement rather than a question. It says, in Bahrain, people need to start dreaming big and beyond borders. So final comment there from an audience member. Anyway, that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll be continuing our discussions with Salim Ismail, who will be giving a keynote speech. It's published to start at 9 o'clock. There is a change to the advertised program. It's going to start at 1 minute before 9 o'clock. All right, 1 minute before 9 o'clock. There'll also be more panel discussions as well. Thank you very much indeed for all of your attention, all of your questions. I hope you've had a very stimulating afternoon. Thank you. See you tomorrow morning.